Right now, your legs are still. Your chair is holding your weight. Your phone is in your hand. And somewhere in your body, a very old alarm is quietly going off. You can't hear it, but your ancestors would have. For almost the entire history of your species, sitting still for hours was not relaxation. It was strange. It was even dangerous. So why does your body still react to stillness the way it does? Why does a long day at a desk leave you more exhausted than a long walk ever could? The answer isn't about laziness or willpower. It's about a body built for a world that no longer exists. Start with the numbers. Anthropologist Herman Pontzer spent years studying the Hadza, a hunter-gatherer community in Tanzania who still live largely as humans did tens of thousands of years ago. He expected their daily calorie burn to be far higher than that of a typical Western adult. After all, Hadza men and women walk for miles every single day, searching for food, tracking animals, digging up tubers. But when Pontzer measured their total energy expenditure, the number was almost identical to someone sitting in an office in London or New York. That result surprised almost everyone. How could people walking 6 to 10 miles a day burn roughly the same total calories as people who barely leave their desks? The answer reshaped how scientists think about the human body. It turns out your body doesn't simply burn more energy the more you move. Instead, it adapts. It reallocates. Movement isn't an add-on to your energy budget. It's baked into the budget itself. Here's the part that matters for you today. Your body assumes movement will happen. It was designed around the expectation of walking, not the exception of it. So when movement disappears, the systems that were built to work alongside it don't just sit patiently and wait. They start to misfire. Think about your ancestors for a moment. 2 million years ago, before agriculture, before villages, before the wheel, walking wasn't exercise. It was simply how the day happened. Finding food meant walking. Finding water meant walking. Following animals, escaping predators, moving camp with the seasons. All of it meant walking. Often for hours, often across difficult terrain. A body that couldn't handle that kind of movement didn't survive long enough to pass on its genes. This is where the work of biologist Daniel Lieberman becomes essential. Lieberman at Harvard has spent decades studying what he calls the endurance running hypothesis. The idea that early humans weren't just capable of long-distance movement, they were exceptionally built for it. Compared to almost every other primate, humans have long legs, springy tendons in the feet, and an extraordinary ability to cool the body through sweating. Lieberman argues these traits didn't appear by accident. They appeared because early humans likely engaged in persistence hunting, chasing prey animals not with speed, but with relentless endurance, over hours, until the animals simply overheated and collapsed. Pause on that for a second. Your body may have been shaped in part by outrunning animals that were faster than you, not through a sprint, but through sheer, sustained motion. That's not a metaphor. That's physiology. Your Achilles tendon, your sweat glands, the arch in your foot. These aren't just convenient features. They're the leftover architecture of a life spent almost constantly in motion. So what happens when that architecture gets almost no use? This is where things get uncomfortable, because the modern answer is a lot. Prolonged sitting has been linked in study after study to slower metabolism, poorer blood sugar regulation, and weaker cardiovascular health, even in people who exercise regularly. Researchers sometimes call this the active couch potato pattern, someone who works out for an hour but then sits for the other 15 waking hours of the day. And the body, it turns out, notices that pattern. It doesn't average it out kindly, but the effects aren't only physical. This is where psychologist John Ratey's research becomes relevant. Ratey, who has spent much of his career studying the relationship between movement and the brain, describes physical activity as something close to a biochemical requirement for healthy brain function. Not a bonus, but closer to a baseline. Walking increases blood flow to the brain. It raises levels of a protein called BDNF, which helps neurons grow and connect. Ratey has gone as far as calling exercise miracle grow for the brain. Without it, the mental fog many people describe after a day of sitting isn't imagination. It's biology asking for something it didn't get. Now think about your ancestors again, but from a different angle. Have you ever noticed that some of your best thinking happens while walking? That a stuck problem sometimes untangles itself the moment you get up and move? That's not a coincidence, and it's not just a modern habit picked up from productivity culture. Walking meetings, walking meditations, walking as a creative ritual. All of it may be an echo of a much older truth. The brain you're using to read this sentence was built inside a body that almost never stopped moving. There's a deeper layer here, too. Anthropologist David Reichlin has studied not just whether ancient humans moved, but why that movement may have shaped the brain's very structure. His research connects aerobic activity to the growth and maintenance of the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory and spatial navigation. The exact skills you'd need to track animals, remember watering holes, and find your way back to camp across miles of unmarked land. In other words, walking wasn't separate from thinking. Walking may have been one of the forces that built the kind of brain capable of thinking in the first place. So here's the strange truth sitting underneath all of this. Modern life didn't remove movement because your body stopped needing it. It removed movement because technology made moving optional. Chairs, cars, elevators, screens. Every one of them solves a problem your ancestors didn't have the luxury of solving. And each solution quietly subtracts a small piece of what your body expects from a normal day. That's why restlessness after sitting too long doesn't feel like nothing. It feels like something specific, a low hum of unease, a strange fatigue that more sitting never seems to fix. Have you noticed that lying down to rest after a long sedentary day sometimes leaves you feeling worse, not better? That's not weakness. That's an old patient signal, still running in the background, still expecting to be answered the way it always was. None of this means you need to hunt for your dinner or walk 10 miles across open land. That world is gone, and it isn't coming back. But your body doesn't know that. Somewhere underneath the desk job, the car commute, and the endless scrolling, there's still a nervous system calibrated for a hunter-gatherer's day. It doesn't ask for much. Even short, frequent walks have been shown to counteract many of the effects of prolonged sitting. Not because walking is a modern trend, but because it's the oldest habit your body has. Consider how strange this would look to someone from that older world. Imagine explaining to a Hadza elder that people in wealthy countries pay money to walk on a machine that goes nowhere. Imagine trying to explain that some people schedule steps the way ancient humans scheduled meals. It sounds almost absurd. And yet, it makes a strange kind of sense, doesn't it? When a behavior stops happening automatically, humans eventually have to reinvent it on purpose. That reinvention shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. Standing desks, walking pads under office chairs, fitness trackers that buzz when you've been still too long. None of these are new inventions in the way they feel. They're patches, quiet, modern attempts to plug a gap that used to fill itself. Your ancestors never needed a device to remind them to move because their environment never allowed them not to. There's an evolutionary mismatch at the center of all this, and once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. Your taste buds still crave sugar and fat the way they did when those calories were rare and valuable, even though they're now available at every gas station. Your stress response still floods your body with adrenaline for a difficult email the same way it once did for a genuine physical threat. And your musculoskeletal system still expects the kind of daily, varied movement that used to be unavoidable. Squatting, carrying, climbing, walking over uneven ground, even though most days now offer none of it. This is why simply exercising doesn't always feel like enough. An hour at the gym, however valuable, is a modern solution layered on top of an ancient expectation. Your ancestors weren't doing structured workouts. They were moving in short, constant bursts throughout the entire day. Walking to a water source, crouching to inspect plants, carrying firewood, climbing to scout the horizon. That kind of scattered, near-constant motion is very different from an isolated hour of intensity followed by 23 hours of near-total stillness. Researchers studying sedentary behavior have found that the pattern of movement may matter almost as much as the total amount, which is part of why standing up briefly every hour has been shown to meaningfully offset some of the health risks tied to long, unbroken periods of sitting. Think about your own day for a moment. How much of it happens without your legs? The commute, sitting. The meetings, sitting. The meals, sitting. The evening scroll before sleep, sitting again. None of these moments are inherently unhealthy on their own, but strung together day after day, they form a pattern your biology never had to survive before. Your ancestors' bodies were negotiated across 100,000 years of nearly constant motion. Yours is negotiating a few decades of nearly constant stillness. Is it any wonder something feels slightly off by the end of the day? There's something almost comforting in this, though, once you sit with it, because if the discomfort of stillness is ancient, then so is the relief that comes from movement. You don't need a permission slip to walk. You don't need the perfect shoes, the ideal weather, or an hour carved out of a packed schedule. A short walk around the block taps into the same systems Lieberman studied in ancient runners, the same brain chemistry Ratey described, the same hippocampal pathways Reichland traced back through evolutionary time. It's one of the few genuinely free tools you have that connects you directly to the body you inherited. So the next time you feel that unexplainable urge to get up, to pace, to step outside for no clear reason, try not to override it. That instinct isn't your body malfunctioning. It's the last surviving message from millions of years of ancestors who never once had the option to sit still. And when you finally stand up and take those first few steps, you're not just stretching your legs, you're answering an alarm that's been quietly ringing this entire time.